8 years ago today, 43 seconds and 100 yards maybe changed lives forever. Because 8 years ago today, at this intersection right here, my 16-year-old daughter was on her way to church. She sang in the youth choir. She got across this 2 lanes and was sitting here in the median and was starting across these last 2 when her car jumped time, it died, whatever, and she got hit by a 1-ton welding truck driving 75 miles per hour. She never made it across the road as I did just now. And I'll tell the rest of the story when it gets daylight. Okay, it's daylight now. So, as I was saying, it was just a normal October day, October 27th, 2010. I had been in Tulsa all day at work. I was a store manager then, working for the corporate store, and I had been dealing with corporate all day on an issue. So I was bantering back and forth with my regional manager all day, and on the drive home, it's about a 45-minute drive. So on my drive back to the house, I was on the phone, my cell phone, with a regional manager, and we was arguing back and forth over something that took place at the store, and I was just very preoccupied. So when I came into the house, I threw my purse and keys down, and I was still on the phone with the manager, regional, and my 16-year-old daughter passed me in the hall, and she stopped and gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "I'm headed to church." And I was so engrossed in my conversation that I didn't even acknowledge her. Sorry, this is a little bit hard to talk about. So I didn't even acknowledge her. I was wrapped up in this conversation because I'm the store manager and I have work to do. And so I walked back into my bedroom, and about 5 minutes later, my daughter, my youngest daughter, comes running to the door and banging on my bedroom door saying, Mama, Michaela's been in a wreck." And it just didn't register. I thought, okay, she just left. How did she get in a wreck? Probably backed into somebody in the driveway. You know, I really didn't at that time comprehend what was going on. And so she came back to the door and she said, "Mama, Papa's at the front door. Michaela's been in a wreck." And so by that time I run out of my bedroom. My husband was in the shower. He jumps out of the shower and throws some clothes on. And everything happened so quickly, because by the time I got to my front door and Jerry ran out the door, and as you can see, it wasn't far from our driveway to the accident scene, he takes off running. And while he's running and I'm looking out the front door, Life Flight is landing already. And it was just surreal because I didn't know what was actually taking place, and I see Life Flight landing. And so I'm yelling at my regional manager, and I said, my daughter's been in a wreck, and I don't care what happens with the store. And I just kind of hung up on him. But at the time, that's not my usual demeanor, but at that time, nothing else mattered. So I was a nervous wreck. I wasn't even able to run down to the scene because I just kind of collapsed. And I was there with my youngest daughter, who was probably about 8 at the time, and my husband, pretty soon he came back, and I was hoping he was going to tell me, it's all right, she's okay. But when he walked into that front door, and I still remember the scene in my head just like it was yesterday, he had a hold of Michaela's purse, and it was shredded and covered in glass. And he had to put it in the sink because of other stuff that was on it too. I won't go into on the film. He said, it's bad, we gotta go. And at the time, when I drove you by this morning, I went early because I knew the traffic wouldn't be out. But at the time that she went, it was like 5:45 p.m. that evening, and the traffic is really bad there during the evening hours. Everybody's coming home from work from Tulsa, or they are headed back to Tulsa. And so, excuse me. And so he said, we gotta go. And we couldn't, Life Flight had already taken off with her, and we couldn't go out the normal way because her wreck had backed up the traffic, and the road was still closed, the highway was still closed. So there was a back way to Tulsa, and I know we drove 80 to 90 miles an hour to Tulsa that night to get to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, Life Flight had already landed, and they'd already got her into a trauma unit. And nothing prepares you to walk into that room and see your child laying on that gurney, covered in blood, and she was coherent, but very messed up as far as what happened, where am I? And she would ask that every 5 minutes. It was a grim situation. The doctors had to do a surgery right away to stop the bleeding. She was losing a lot of blood. Her liver had been totally cut in half. Her ribs were missing on one side of her body. Her pelvis was broken. She had a huge head wound, and concussion, bones in the ear broken, face really tore up. And it was just a very traumatizing moment for my husband and I. Our emergency waiting room filled up quickly with our pastor and youth from the church. But even with all those people there, even with all the support, they couldn't fix it. They couldn't change anything. And I had to get away. I had to touch God. So I left the people in the waiting room and I went and found isolated area of the hospital. I walked by the chapel, but I didn't want to go into the chapel for whatever reason. I don't know why. I needed more seclusion than the chapel. So I found a women's bathroom. It was all pink bathroom stalls, pink tile. And I closed myself up in that bathroom stall. And I said, God, I'm not coming out until I have a word from you. I've got to have a word from you on this situation. I can't fix it. My pastor can't fix it. You're the only one that can fix this, and I've got to have a word or I'm going to break. And I remember ever so clearly these words came into my spirit. It was very simply, Leanne, this is a testimony, not a tragedy. And so as soon as those words came into my spirit, there was a peace that covered me. And I was able to walk out of that bathroom stall with more assurance that, okay, we're going to get through this. And so to speed the story along, she ended up in ICU for 10 days, and I was there for every night of it. I did not leave her side. Fortunately, because she was 16, they let me stay in that room with her. And there were nights that, very often, that her heart machines would start alarming because of, she would stop breathing, and I would have to run over and I would shake her and I'd say, come on, Michaela, you gotta breathe, you gotta wake up. And she would get back to going again, and there was times that she was crashing. And I remember one day all these nurses around her, and I had to get away again, and I went to a service elevator and I said, God, you told me this is a testimony, not a tragedy. God, I'm bringing your words back to you. This is a testimony, not a tragedy. And so they got her regulated again, and so after 10 days in ICU, sorry for the sunlight, they put her in on the heart floor because she was still having to wear a heart monitor, and she had chest tube, and it took a while before she could get off the chest tube. They would try to take it out, and then her lungs would deflate again. But eventually we got released from the hospital, and she came home, but she had to start all over again learning to walk. It was a lot of doctor's visits, but she had to miss school from October to March. But even at that, she was able to maintain her grades and graduated as a valedictorian of her class and such. But God turned it into a testimony because she still shares about that today with others. She even wrote a song about it. So, what I'm saying is that 47 seconds was all it took to change my perspective, to alter my life. 47 seconds, 100 yards. And things that seemed like they were so important didn't really matter. I want to encourage you. You have this one life to live. Grab your family, hold them close, and go out and capture your moment.